On the election day, the friends must wholeheartedly participate in the elections, in unity and amity, turning their hearts to God, detached from all things but Him, seeking His guidance and supplicating His aid and bounty.
The Lord hath ordained that in every city a house of justice be established, wherein shall gather counselors to the number of Baha'. It is incumbent upon them to take counsel together, and to have regard for the interests of the servants of God, for His sake, even as they regard their own interests, and to choose that which is meet and seemly.
Once in session, it behooveth them to converse on behalf of God's servants upon the affairs and interests of all. They should, for instance, accord precedence to the teaching of the cause, inasmuch as it is a matter of supreme importance, so that all people, even as a single soul, may enter within the tabernacle of divine unity, and all humanity may become even as a single body.
Discussions must all be confined to spiritual matters that pertain to the training of souls, the instruction of children, the relief of the poor, the help of the feeble throughout all classes in the world, kindness to all peoples, the diffusion of the fragrances of God, and the exaltation of His holy word. Should they endeavor to fulfill these conditions, the grace of the Holy Spirit shall be vouchsafed unto them, and that assembly shall become the center of the divine blessings. The hosts of divine confirmation shall come to their aid, and they shall day by day receive a new effusion of spirit.
Designated as spiritual assemblies, an appellation that must in the course of time be replaced by their permanent and more descriptive title of Houses of Justice, bestowed upon them by the author of the Baha'i Revelation, instituted without any exception in every city, town, and village where 9 or more adult believers are resident, annually and directly elected on the first day of the greatest Baha'i festival by all adult believers, men and women alike, invested with an authority rendering them unanswerable for their acts and decisions to those who elect them, solemnly pledged to follow under all conditions the dictates of the most great justice that can alone usher in the reign of the most great peace, which Baha'u'llah has proclaimed and must ultimately establish, charged with the responsibility of promoting at all times the best interests of the communities within their jurisdiction. These assemblies are to be regarded as the chief sinews of Baha'i society, as well as the ultimate foundation of its administrative structure.
A local spiritual assembly maintains a keen interest in learning how best to advance the community building work within its jurisdiction, and, as such, it consults regularly with friends involved in coordinating endeavors in the cluster. It follows closely the development of any centers of intense activity in the locality, especially by offering support to the teams of believers who have emerged there and are stimulating the process of growth. In general, the more the intensification of activity requires organizational arrangement at the level of the locality or in parts of the locality, say arranging campaigns of home visits, accompanying families who are holding devotional meetings, or encouraging them to form groups to work together. The more prominent the role that can be assumed by the local assembly in this regard.
The shape of Baha'i administration has developed considerably, and its continued development will be essential for the release of the society-building power of the faith. where systematic effort has been made to stimulate conversations in a community about the formation of the local assembly and its purpose, and to sustain those conversations year after year, the strength of the elected body and the dynamism of community life reinforce each other.
The elector is called upon to vote for none but those whom prayer and reflection have inspired him to uphold.
Beware, beware, lest the foul odor of the parties and peoples and their pernicious methods, such as intrigues, party politics, and propaganda, practices which are abhorrent even in name, should ever reach the Baha'i community, exert any influence whatsoever upon the Friends, and thus bring all spirituality to naught. The Friends should, through their devotion, love, loyalty, and altruism, abolish these evil practices, not imitate them. It is only after the Friends completely ignore and sanctify themselves from these evils that the Spirit of God can penetrate and operate in the body of humanity and in the Baha'i community.
The manner of participation by all adult members of the community in these elections is a distinguishing feature of the system of Baha'u'llah, for it is a bounden duty that confers a high privilege upon every Baha'i to select, as a responsible citizen of the new world being brought into existence, the composition of the institutions having authority over the functioning of the Baha'i community. In this regard, indifference and neglect on the part of any believer are alien to the spirit of the cause. The Friends must strive ceaselessly to avoid being contaminated with these destructive attitudes, which have inflicted such damage on the integrity and authority of the institutions of a declining world order.
In the features and outcomes of this electoral process that distinguish it from contemporary practices, we find not limitations, but dawning points of profound implication. The delegates, as well as the generality of the believers, uphold the purity of Baha'i elections, scrupulously avoiding electioneering or discussion of who should or should not be a member, even when specific names are not mentioned. For not only does the guardian prohibit reference to particular personalities, but he also states that we should refrain from influencing the opinions of others. Collectively, the Friends strive to purge themselves of every trace of worldly tendencies, pursuit of personal ambitions, promotion of individuals, contest, and partisanship, which can corrupt and distort an election's spiritual character. Delegates are obliged to become intelligent, well-informed, and responsible electors so as to be able to make a wise choice at the election time. They enjoy the unfettered right to choose from among all those eligible, whether it be to retain members or to select new ones. The community wholeheartedly embraces the result of the election, confident that the delegates have cast their ballots for those for whom prayer and reflection have inspired them to vote.
One compelling insight which has emerged is that the extent to which the station and leadership of a local assembly is recognized in a community is related to how deeply the believers appreciate the sacredness of the electoral process and their duty to participate in it, in an atmosphere wholly free from the taint of suasion or worldly attitudes about power. As consciousness is raised in a community about the spiritual principles underlying Baha'i elections, a new conception is formed of what it means for someone to be called to serve on an institution, and understanding grows of how the individual, the community, and the local assembly and its agencies relate to one another.
Through their wholehearted embrace of the Baha'i electoral process, the believers will witness, day by day, a greater contrast between the emerging institutions of the Baha'i administrative order and the decaying social order around them. In this increasing distinction will be seen the promise of the glory of the world order of Baha'u'llah, the system destined to fulfill the highest expectations of humanity.
The manner in which the elector exercises the right and privilege to cast his vote is of great significance. Shoghi Effendi's instruction in this passage explains that to be able to make a wise choice at the election time, it is necessary for him to be in close and continued contact with all local activities, be they teaching, administrative, or otherwise, and to fully and wholeheartedly participate in the affairs of the local as well as national committees and assemblies in his country. It is only in this way that a believer can develop a true social consciousness and acquire a true sense of responsibility in matters affecting the interests of the cause. Baha'i community life thus makes it a duty for every loyal and faithful believer to become an intelligent, well-informed, and responsible elector, and also gives him the opportunity of raising himself to such a station.
While there should be no mention of personalities in connection with Baha'i elections, it is quite appropriate for believers to discuss the requirements and qualifications for membership in the institution to be elected. Shoghi Effendi offers clear guidance on this point. I feel that reference to personalities before the election would give rise to misunderstanding and differences. What the friends should do is to get thoroughly acquainted with one another, to exchange views, to mix freely, and discuss among themselves the requirements and qualifications for such a membership without reference or application, however indirect, to particular individuals. Among the necessary qualities specified by the guardian are those of unquestioned loyalty, of selfless devotion, of well-trained mind, of recognizability and mature experience, with a heightened awareness of the functions to be performed by the elected body. The believer can properly assess those for whom a vote should be cast from among a pool of those whom the electors believe to be qualified to serve. Selection should be made with due consideration given to such other factors as age distribution, diversity, and gender. The elector should make his choice after careful thought over an extended period before the actual election.
When called upon to vote in a Baha'i election, believers should be aware that they are carrying out a sacred task unique to this dispensation. They should approach this duty in a prayerful attitude, seeking divine guidance and confirmation. As Shoghi Effendi has advised, they must turn completely to God and with a purity of motive, a freedom of spirit, and a sanctity of heart, participate in the elections.